Hi, it's Andrea Cartwright here from OpenJaw Technology, and I'm joined for today's webinar with Al from 15 Below.
Hello.
And we're going to talk today about two things. We're going to talk about notification, and we're going to talk about conversational interfaces. And I guess the main theme of the webinar is how do you use those two very important methods of customer communication and turn them into an opportunity to reduce costs, increase revenue, and of course, importantly, make for happier customers. Just a couple of minutes on OpenJaw before we get into the main presentation. OpenJaw is based in Dublin. It's been around since 2002. We specialise in travel retail for airlines and travel companies, and by that I mean the ability for an airline to sell air or non-air ancillaries in line with their air ticket purchase. Today we're focusing more specifically on our AI platform, which is one of our newest products, which was developed in 2017. And we work with a whole range of different customers, ranging from British Airways to Cathay Pacific, to Comair. We work with 8 airlines in China, Asia Miles. So we really cover the breadth of travel companies globally. And I'll let Al talk about 15 Below.
Great, thanks very much. And thanks for having me on the webinar. So 15 Below is a sort of specialist company. We're based in the UK, although we have offices in Sydney and other places around the world. And what we focus on is proactive communication with passengers for all sorts of reasons, from booking confirmations through pre-trip, check-in notifications, and we do a lot of work around disruption. We currently look after just over 700 million passengers across sort of 50 airlines. We integrate with reservation systems and loads of other smaller systems to send out notifications across every channel. So email, SMS, app push, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, all sorts of things. Today I'm going to talk about a couple of notifications that we do, but before that, just to show you our client list. So we are customers all over the world. We have lots of low cost, lots of full service, small airlines, large airlines, and we very much tailor our approach to each market and to each individual airline's needs. So as I said, a lot of the work we do is around disruption. So that is everything from day of travel, flight status updates, and that kind of thing. And a lot of work we do is around very labour-intensive processes around things like reschedules and reaccoms, where the passenger's been booked onto a new flight. We pick that up automatically out of the reservation system, and then we go out to the customer, trying different channels to try and get hold of them to see if they're okay with that new flight. We will cycle through different channels to try and get hold of the customer. One of the things we're going to talk about today is how chatbots and conversational messaging can fit into that. So a sort of standard process for us with this kind of thing is to try one channel. So in this case, it's email. We try and get the customer to accept their schedule change. If they don't, we go and try something else, in this case, SMS, and then we can try automated voice. And then if all else fails, we're going to push it to the call center. And the reason that's going to happen is either because we couldn't find the customer on the right channel, because there was no contact details in the booking perhaps, and we couldn't find them in the loyalty program or the CRM, or it might be that the customer is just a bit confused about what they're happening, or they're worried that something else hasn't been taken into account. Maybe they've got an SSR on the booking, or they're worried about their hotel booking or something else that's attached to that flight. So that's something we can see this working well with using AI and that kind of thing to answer some questions. As I said, we're trying to get a response out of the customer. So it's this kind of loop, this process of being able to give the customer options, to ask them how they feel about things, and then get their actual response. It's really important to do that, not just to have a one-way process that goes out to the customer and just tells them what's happened. You have to get their feedback on that. Otherwise, they could turn up on the wrong day at the airport. If you don't get that feedback from them, they might well decline that flight, at the airport, you'll have to rebook them anyway. You'll lose 2 seats, plus you'll have to pay compensation for the day and everything else. So it's super critical to manage this well. The next thing we're going to talk, the other module we're going to talk about today is pre-departure communications. So these are designed to answer all of the passengers' questions before they phone up and ask them, basically. So it's proactively going out and saying, you're 2 days out from flight, for instance, these are all the things you need to know. So this is the terminal you're flying from, this is luggage allowance, all of that kind of thing. So with this, we're always trying to personalize that experience from the information we include, but also from ancillary offers, because they get great engagement rates. So what we typically do here is we know when to time these messages based on SIM files and things like that. We pull together all of that information from the booking, from, you know, we use airport information, weather information, and then call out to third parties to get deals for, you know, hotels or, you know, in destination, that kind of thing. What we found with all of these things, if you really want it to work, it has to be a multi-channel approach. And traditionally, that's meant things like email, SMS, app push, you know, more recently, things like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. But we're interested in how you can use the you know, AI and conversational here, because that's going to be an extra channel. You can see on the screen there, this is a JetBlue case study dealing with the polar vortex. And each of those coloured bands on the screen are different channels. And you can see if the customer had only gone for like app push, which is the bottom one, or just used email, which is the red one, they wouldn't have really got hold of everyone. And we expect to see another 20% of automation available on this if we can use those conversational methods. And that's another whole load of calls that don't need to go to the call centre and tie up staff. That's us. Back to you, Andrea.
Yeah, great. So I think when we talk about T-Social, we are talking about chatbot, and that term is now used interchangeably with digital agent, conversational commerce. So there's a whole lot of different terminologies that are I guess, being used now because it's a new technology. But there's 2 or 3 key messages that we probably want to get through here. And one is that when you hear somebody talking about chatbots in an airline context, really what they're talking about is giving the customer the opportunity to use their mobile phone to communicate with an airline in the way that they would with their friends. So we now really live in what's known as the messaging era. So with T-Social, we give the airline the capability to set up T-Social within their contact center. And Al was talking about it enables the opportunity to automate a large percentage of calls, repetitive based calls that come into the call center every day. And by repetitive calls, I'm talking things like, how much baggage can I take on? What time do I need to check in? What time does my flight leave? And in today's world, the customer has a number of different channels that they can use to do that. They can either go into a travel agent and ask those sorts of questions, and certainly that was one of the only ways you could do that 20 plus years ago, and in some countries it's still the main form of doing that. You can call the call center, so you can pick up the phone and you can generally sit on hold for quite some time to be asking a simple question, or you can literally search through an airline's website, and as people that fly a lot or not very often at all will know that every airline has a different type of interface, so you are constantly seeking out where to find the same information on different airlines' websites. When we're talking about conversational messaging, one of the most interesting and important things is that interface messaging is how you use Facebook Messenger today, for example. So if you're using Messenger to communicate with your friends, you know how it works. You type in or you voice in a conversation, or you may use WhatsApp or WeChat or one of the other types of messaging channels. Using this with an airline is doing the same sorts of things. It's typing in something like, hello, can you tell me what time my flight leaves? And you will get a response from an automated agent or a chatbot, whatever we want to call it, or a digital agent that is responding to your question. And I think one of the key things here is that using a chatbot to automate these types of calls means increases an airline's accuracy. It certainly creates the a much faster response, and it means that the customer can basically self-service for themselves, so they can find out the information they want, when they want, on the channel they want, at the time that they want. So there's some of the really key things around messaging today. And I think what's interesting here is that this is not a technology thing. It's the consumer that's driving change. So today's consumer, whether they're millennial, whether they're baby boomer, whatever band we want to throw them in today's world, because brands like Amazon and Uber and whoever else are giving people the immediacy to have what they want now, today we're much more demanding, we're impatient, we've got higher expectations, and we really want to be able to find out the information on the spot at any given time. So it's a consumer-driven change. And this data changes like literally every second. And I think without needing to dwell on this slide particularly, what we can say is that globally, messaging active users are in the billions, and this is only going to increase. So what we're finding is within airlines and travel companies, and in fact, all sorts of retail organizations, banks, finance companies, whatever industry it is that there is a new channel that is starting to emerge that has to be taken care of by the customer service people, and that is how customers today will want to interface with them over their messaging channels into the future. And that could be across any type of the customer journey. This is a basic one on the inspiration for a flight. So all the sorts of things that can happen there. And so why is it important that businesses start moving to messaging? It's because on the demand side, there's cost and productivity pressure always, particularly in call centers. They need to increase call response rates, handle complex queries. In every business, there's revenue pressure, so need the ability to cross-sell, upsell, and remove friction. Customers want to self-service, as I've said before. And on the supply side, and importantly, we're at the start of the technology curve for AI and chatbots, and AI and natural language processing is just getting better and better. So as it improves, just the way any type of technology over the years has got better, more people use it. So chatbots are no longer dumb. They're going beyond basic text matching, and messaging is maturing.
So yeah, I mean, so we're really interested in this from a conversational point of view, because just one of my first thoughts there is when you were talking about people coming in via any channel, and we've known for ages that you have to do multiple channels because you never really know. You know, today I've probably used 5 different channels talking to my mates, my colleagues, everyone else. You know, so you never really know where you're going to catch me, which is why we always try a multi-channel approach. But I think what's really interesting is with customers, it's about who instigates the conversation, right? And then how that gets a response. So in that example there where someone says, you know, is my flight on time? One of the things we think could be a real game changer here is being able to subscribe to your own P&R. So one of the biggest challenges our airlines face is not having contact details for the passenger in the booking. Because if they're a travel agency booking, the travel agent will hide their contact details. But that can be like, you know, I think the industry average is like 50%. So that's all of the great initiatives people are trying and all the things that are going on in the industry at the moment. 50% of that is going to be effective because you can't tell the passenger they're going to use biometrics.
Al, is that because their customer data is in an indirect channel, such as a travel agent? Yeah,
exactly. So the problem is the travel agent doesn't want the airline to steal that customer. The airline doesn't want their partner airlines to steal that customer, but ultimately the passenger owns the passenger. It's not about somebody else owning them. So they should have direct control over their data, and it's their booking is their information ultimately. So one of the things I like about this is a customer could say, "Is my flight on time?" But then the chatbot could go back to them and say, "It is on time. But if you'd like updates, why don't I add your contact details into the booking?" And then from then on, all the automated jobs can still kick in, because realistically, customers shouldn't have to ask if their flight's on time. They should trust the airline to tell them, but they can't because their contact details are on there. So it really does close a big loop actually in there, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess and you've hit the nail on the head. So today, if you're a customer and you are booking through an airline's website, then generally you will have already set up a mechanism where you've got direct communication with that airline. So they've got your email address or they've got your mobile phone number. So if they need to contact you for a disruption scenario or any type of pre-travel notification, they know how to do that. But it's I guess you said 50% or around about 50%. It's a huge amount of people that are missing out on the opportunity, I guess, to have direct communications with an airline. And I think that's a great scenario where if you're talking about how do you take a notification system and make it, give it two-way interactivity so that a customer can get a notification and then maybe query something further. I mean, is there a scenario maybe that you could talk about on like maybe a use case or something that a customer could do?
So for disruptions, disruption's a really good case. So like I said, we're going to go out and try multiple approaches to tell a customer that we're really sorry, your aircraft had to be replaced. We had to rebook you onto a new flight. You're now traveling 5 hours later. Is that still going to work for you? Can you still make it? And we're just, at the moment it's quite a blunt tool. It's still, we're one of the few companies that does two ways. So you can actually accept it or decline it, or maybe go through a manage my booking process. But this gives the passenger the ability to say, maybe, if, as long as, that kind of interaction when they come back. So it isn't quite such a blunt tool. And that could just be as simple as I'm okay with that as long as that still means I get my vegetarian meal.
Yes.
Okay. So if you think every single passenger who worries about that is going to decline and then go through to the call center and then clog up another resource when all they're worried about is something fairly trivial. It could also be they say, no, I can't make that flight. I need one the following day, or I need one earlier that day. And at that point, they can self-serve to rebook themselves and go through a booking flow, which is really powerful, And that's, all that kind of thing at the moment is you can either give them simple choices based on their circumstance, the value of the customer, that kind of thing. But if that fails, it's going to go to the call center. And it's about how to minimize that call center, because they don't want to be doing that. They should be doing something more constructive.
They don't want to be doing it. It's true. And I think that's right. I mean, if call center agents are freed up to be handling high value or complex calls, then that's where their efforts should be driven. And if simple requests or simple questions can be handled by a chatbot, then it's a better result all around for the airline, for the call center operator, who's probably possibly more engaged in answering more, certainly being more productive, and of course for the customer that gets the response that they need at any given time.
And the same goes for pre-trip notifications as well. I mean, when we're sending out pre-trip messages, we're trying to anticipate what that individual customer needs to know at that point in time. We'll then use that engagement to help the airline to cross and upsell ancillary services, which also need to be personalized. But, in an ideal world, you'd know everything about that customer and everything, be able to personalize it down to the nth degree. But in reality, you pad it a little bit. You have to you take your best guess on loads of information they might be interested in, and then pad it out with loads of deals they might be interested in. And what actually you should be doing is going in with your best personalized shop, but then allowing something like a chatbot to cross and upsell more products to them, or to answer any questions that you haven't included, I don't know, what's the connection time between those 2 points or something like that? Can I make that if I've got a bad leg? I don't know, whatever it is, when my assisted service help with that kind of thing. Things you can try and include that kind of stuff, but you don't want to include everything, because you just end up with a really long message that people won't read all of.
Yeah, and that's a good example, because I know with those sorts of, particularly questions that are slightly out of the ordinary, they can be really, really hard to find on an airline's website. So you'll end up...
luggage allowance is quite hard to find.
Yeah, well, calculating luggage allowance, so actually understanding what that means for the route that you're on, whether you're a member of loyalty, etc. So there's a whole bunch of rules, and I think one of the cool things about using a chatbot is that type of complex query around baggage or something can be responded to very, very rapidly, and it's correct because it's using the data that's actually pulled from the airline's FAQ content, wherever they're coming from, frequently asked content, frequently asked questions. So the answer is going to be the same all the time, and it'll be pulled from the correct data source. So that is another, that's another great point. And I think, I mean, like, it's like any technology at the moment, there's a great argument to be looking at automating things around the service side. I think as the technology matures and the experience gets better, we'll start to see more around the cross-sell and upsell. Certainly some of the bigger OTAs now, like Expedia, are doing some really interesting stuff on cross-sell of ancillaries through chatbot. I think it's probably, at the moment, it's quite a small part of the market, but I think we'll get there rapidly as consumers start to use this thing more and more.
I think it's a trend as well. I mean, we'd like to see it to get to the point where, you know, maybe the airline doesn't know everything about you. You know, they don't know that you've got a connecting flight on another airline, for instance. You know, there's loads of other stuff. And being able to say to someone like, if the chatbot can say stuff like, you know, I noticed that it's raining outside and we know that this time of day is going to be really busy. Do you want to park a bit closer to the airport? We can get you deals on parking at, you know, at Heathrow. That kind of stuff is some really clever stuff, you know, and you can try and include that. One of the things we're quite interested in as well is, can we use the data that comes from the AI to preload the message in the first place? So we're always starting from a more personalized position of saying, you know, this profile of customer needs this information, because the more personalized you are when you instigate that conversation, the more engagement you're going to get, the easier it will be to cross and upsell and, you know, and service them more effectively.
So we've just spent the last 15 or 20 minutes talking about what you might get if you join notification services as an airline passenger with a chatbot, and how that improves the two-way notifications that are already in place today. So I'm Andrea Cartwright from OpenJaw. If there's any questions, let us know.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. It's been really great to sit on this. I think there's a lot of potential. So if anyone's got any questions, do get in touch with us.